Okay, so welcome back to our series of videos on how to use Lantern. Now, in the last video, we made a map using Trizbort and saved it. And in this video, we're going to open up Lantern, which is already open right here, and then we're going to import that map and see if make some modifications to it to get it to be kind of playable. So let's just take a quick look through the Lantern interface, though, and see what we've got. This is the main screen. This is where you can set this is the directory your project gets written out to. This is the welcome message that's displayed to the player. You know, obviously that's the author's name. This is where all the rooms show up when we import them, and we can connect our rooms north, south, east, and west using these drop-down menus. We can set properties on objects, whether they're portable, we can put things in them, whether we can put things on them, whether they're scenery, open and closed, all of this stuff right here. There's three flags that are used that you can use for your own purposes, like, you know, on, off, above ground, below ground. You can use these three flags for whatever you want. And you can also customize the "you can't go that way" messages. So rather than having it say "you can't go that way" all the time, you could say, you know, if I try to go north from a particular room, say, well, the cliff is too steep, or something like that. That makes the game a little more immersive. There's a tab for adding your own verbs to the game. Like, you know, if we've got a tin can in our game, so we could say "kick the can." You know, kick is not a built-in verb, but we could certainly add it. And then we can put rules on verbs to say, like, okay, if I want to kick something, well, I have to be able to see it. So there's a bunch of built-in checks here that you can put on verbs. So, you know, if I want to do something, I have to have light. You know, if I want to open something, it can't already be opened, right? You know, if I use this verb, it has to have a direct object. So you can put checks on your verbs to restrict the way the player is allowed to use them. Now, the functions are bits of code that you write to respond to sentences. So you can see there's a tab for sentences here. Sentences are specific sets of input that the player would type, like "kick the can," right? There's the verb is kick, the first noun is can. Well, what do we do if the player types that in? Now we need to somehow implement a kicking the can mechanism. So that's where we would add a function. We could add a function here called kick can, and then wire it up to a sentence. So when the player, you know, when the verb is kick and the object is can, call the kick can function, something like that. We can have events. Events run every turn, and these can be used to implement things like the battery in my flashlight is being drained. You know, the engine is burning fuel. Maybe every 50 turns the thief appears, or there's a 1 in 10 chance that the cave I'm in is going to collapse. That kind of, or, you know, my health recharges by 1 every turn until it reaches 100. That's what events are. Events are run every turn. They're checked every turn. But the syntax is exactly the same for functions. The syntax is very, very much like C. So if you've ever programmed in C, then this should be very, very familiar to you. There are some built-in variables. The direct object is the first noun. The I-object is the indirect object. That's the second noun. There's a score variable. The game keeps track of your moves. There's a health variable. Turns without light. That's, you know, like if you've been in darkness for 3 turns, you're eaten by a grue, or the cave collapses, something like that. And whether the game's over or not. So these are variables that you don't have to make. They're there for you, but you can certainly make your own variables here, and you just click add. And it's worth noting here that these are all unsigned bytes, so the values you can range from 0 to 255. So there's no negative numbers, there's no big numbers. I know that seems kind of limiting. I haven't really run into a situation where it's been an issue, though. The review tab, this is for me as a high school teacher when people make their games. I can look at the writing in the game and check the quality. But also your game will show up here, and if you want to double check your spelling, click copy to clipboard, and then you can paste the thing into Word, and then you can use Microsoft's Word spell checker. What else have we got? The walkthrough tab. So this is for testing. The test client, there's a little, if you go up to test and you say launch player, a little window will pop up where you can play your game. And that window you can enter in many, many commands separated by a comma. So what you can do here is save a particular test case, having all the commands separated by commas, and then you can paste that into the player, and that way you can test your game all the way from start to finish. It's a way for me to verify as a teacher, again, that the game actually works from start. There's a playable path through the game, but this could be used for testing all sorts of scenarios. So that's the purpose of the walkthrough. So now let's go import our map. Actually, there's one thing I forgot to do in Trizbort. Let's go take a look. If you go to the settings here under tools and you pop that up, you can enter info about your game here. So the description is actually your project name. Welcome to this lantern test project. How about that? Okay. The title is used as the directory to create the files when you output your game. The author is transmitted over or translated over. The description is actually it becomes the welcome message. So let's click OK there, save the map, and then let's go import this in Lantern. So if I go over to Lantern and I go to the File menu and I say Import Trizbort file, we'll create a new project, yes. And now I want to go open up my Lantern demo. Lantern demo, click Open, and you can see, oh, now it's going to ask me to save it, so I'll call it, I don't want to call it, well, I'll call it Lantern Demo 1 or something. I just want to make sure I don't overwrite my map. Although I think the map is saved as a Triz file, so I think I'd be okay. But Trizbort actually uses XML as its saved game format, or as its save format, and that's what makes it easy for Lantern to load it in. All right, so let's take a look at our, oh, you can see here, there's our project directory Lantern demo. Welcome to this Lantern test project, and the author's name got carried over. Let's go look at our rooms. So here in this drop down, you can see all the rooms. You get 3 objects by default. You get an object called Offscreen. That's kind of the root object of everything in the world. The world is implemented as a tree structure, with Offscreen being the top. All of the rooms hang off of Offscreen, and if the player is in a particular room, then it's a child of a particular room. And if the player has a flashlight, then that object is a child of the player. So the flashlight is a child of the player, which is a child of a room, which is a child of Offscreen. So the whole thing is implemented as a big tree structure. And we get three rooms for free. You get Offscreen, the player object, and then if you're creating a project from scratch, then you at least get 1 room. But you can see here that Lantern has imported all of our rooms and all of our objects. And it's given them unique names. So you could have 2 rooms called Forest. That would be fine. The ID name would be different, though. You'd have like Forest 1 and Forest 2. All right, so let's take a look at our objects and make sure that everything looks good here. Let's go to the field. Let's go to the player first. Let's go to Offscreen. Let's start at the beginning. So Offscreen is actually kind of a useful place, even though you're never supposed to be able to actually go there. It's a place you can put objects when they're not needed. So let's say you've got a scenario where you want to have a monster drop. You kill the troll and it drops a diamond bracelet or something. Well, what you do is you have a dead troll object off screen. You have a diamond bracelet object off screen. When you kill the troll, you move the troll off screen, bring the dead troll into the room, bring the diamond bracelet into the room, and you do this kind of switch in, switch out of your objects to make it look to the player as though that the monster has died and given you a bracelet. So off screen is a good place to keep objects until you actually need them. Now let's look at player. The player is in field 2. And here's the description for the player. You're a wonderful person. You shouldn't care what you look like. Feel free to change that. Obviously, if you're doing a very somber game, or more, I don't know, a more serious game, then you probably want to override the snarky default description. Notice that the player is in field 2. And there's synonyms. So if you want an object to have synonyms, you can specify them down here. Just separate them by commas. And that's it. So now let's go look at where the player is. The player is in field 2. So notice that the parent object of field 2 is off screen. So the field 2 object is a child of off screen. And there's our description. And the emitting light thing, that's whether or not you can see there. So that's a lit location. And notice here, if we go west, we end up at the forest. And if we go east, we're at the gate. And if we go southwest, we get to the clearing. So notice that the gate is a pass-through object. If we try to go east, it says, oh, there's a gate. Hang on, is that thing a door? Then I have to do all the door logic. If it's okay to go through the door, then it takes you through the gate to the object on the other side. So doors are pass-through objects. All right, let's, and now there's a whole video on doors too, so if you didn't quite get that, it comes back again. Now let's look at the clearing. So the clearing, I can go north to the forest. I can go northeast to the field. Let's say if and then let's go to the forest here. I can go east to the field, south to the clearing. But let's say if I wanted to go north or something, I could say the forest is too dense. Right? And maybe I could paste that in here for all the directions I can't go. And now that's going to give me a better description of what's going on. What about the gate? So now we need to set some options up on the gate here. The gate is not emitting light. The gate is not a light source. It's openable, right? Because it's, you can open a gate and it's a door. None of this other stuff is true. Let's make it scenery too. So, because we already mentioned in the room description that there was a gate there, so we don't want the gate listed twice. So now let's put the gate in the field where the player is, and because the gate has to be in a room in order for us to interact with it. So if we go back to our map here, the gate is kind of interesting. It sits between these two fields, but it's actually in this room, so that's where the player has to be in order to interact with it. Now let's go. I'll see what else we've got here. We had the trees. So let's make the trees scenery. So they won't say you see trees here. But in a forest you could conceivably be expected to look at trees, right? So the trees are old growth, I don't know, beech trees or something like that. That's a good description, okay? And then they're not portable, right? If I click portable, I shouldn't be able to do that. I shouldn't be able to have a portable scenery object. Scenery objects are not allowed to be portable. Do not make them portable. Because you should not be able to pick up scenery. All right. What else? The tin can. Let's just say, this is an old. Give it a description. An old, can. Is an old. I don't know. All right, it's fine. And then let's say an old tin can lies on the ground. So this is the initial description, is how that's described when the player first sees it in the room. And could we put things in a can? Yeah, sure. Could we take a can? Yeah. Let's make it portable. None of this other stuff would really apply. We can't really open a can. Well, I guess maybe we could, and that really depends on the implementation. Like if you have some puzzle with a can opener, then that might be the case. But we're just going to assume that the lid on the can is missing. It's an open container. Oh, well, yeah, let's make it open. So it should be an open container, a portable open container. And then let's save the game here. And now let's run it and just see what happens. So now if I go to launch player, you can see the game pops up. Welcome to this Lantern Test Project version 1.0, Evan Wright. Field, this is a plowed field. There's a forest to the west and a clearing to the southwest. A gate leads east to another field. Okay, so let's go southwest. Now we're in the clearing. See, I can't go that way. See, if I type examine self, you're a wonderful person, you shouldn't care what you look like. So that's our default description, which we could have changed. We can type look, I for inventory. I can go north. This is a gloomy forest that extends in all directions. Now if I type north, you can see the forest is too dense. We're getting that message that we overrode the you can't go that way message with something that's a little bit more descriptive. Now there should be trees here, right? So if I type look, it doesn't say you see trees here because the trees are scenery, but I could say, look at trees. It says the trees are old growth beech trees. Okay, can I take them? You can't take that. So the trees are there. They're just part of the scenery. They're just there to be looked at. If you mention something in a room description and it's not portable, you should probably have a scenery object to back it up. That will make the world feel a little more real and not like it's a bunch of thin cardboard cutouts. So it won't feel quite so much like a facade. So let's go back to the field here, and you can see it says a gate leads east to another field. It doesn't say you see a gate here because we made the gate scenery as well. So if I try to take the gate, right, it says you can't take that. I can look at the gate, it says it's a rusty old gate. If I try to go east, it says the gate is closed, right, because we didn't check the open box. But I could type open the gate, it says opened. Okay, now I should be able to go east to the field, and it says description not set, because we didn't put a description on that room. And there's the tin can, right? The tin can is a portable open container. Take can, taken, inventory, you're carrying a tin can, drop can, dropped. Okay, what else? Look in can. What happens if we try to look in the can? The tin can is empty. Cool. So it's a container, but it doesn't contain anything right now. So there we go. There's a scenario where we created a map in Trizbort. We brought it into Lantern, and one thing you're going to have to do is set the name. There's the descriptions on your objects. You're going to have to set the bit flags on your objects. You can override the "you can't go that way" messages. You want to manipulate your doors a little bit. You want to move the doors into the room where the player will be when they interact with that door. You want to go in and just make sure that if you can see in a room, you want to check that it's lit. And that's kind of it. I mean, that's enough to get a game going. And let me just show you how to use the walkthrough, because this is really useful for testing, especially if you've got some sort of thing that you're working on very, very far into a game. Let me go to the walkthrough here, and I'll type in, west, X trees, south, comma, northeast, comma, open gate, comma, east, whoops, comma, take can, right? So I can type in a whole bunch of comma separated commands there, copy walkthrough to clipboard, launch the player, and now I should be able to paste in all of those commands, and you can see it executed all of those commands. So that's a great way of testing out whether or not your game works. So there you go. There's how to take your map, put it, bring it into Lantern, and then perform some minor modifications on it to make it runnable. So there we go. In the next videos, I'll talk about some of the finer points of Lantern, how to add your own verbs, how to add your own custom logic, how to add the kind of how to add puzzles, the kind of things that we would expect to have in an adventure game, how to model an end game, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, how to export it to your particular retro platform of choice. So there you go. If you have any questions on how to do this, feel free to shoot me an email at evancwright@yahoo.com, and I will be happy to facilitate your adventuring in any way that I can. Thank you.